Executive Director of Catch. We are a Northbrook-based organization committed to ensuring a community where mental health is a priority, mental illness is not stigmatized, and where it is okay to not be okay, because help and understanding are available at home, at school, and in our community at large. The Catch team and I warmly welcome all of you, and we are very grateful to Erica Leibrandt of Sound Mind Counseling in Glenview for joining us. Erica will speak candidly and compassionately with you about teen mental health. It has been a challenging year of loss, uncertainty, isolation, and recently the tragic death of a fellow student, Dylan Buckner, who died by suicide just a few weeks ago after bravely battling depression. Our thoughts remain with the Buckner family and friends as they mourn his passing. You showed up tonight to take care of yourselves and to understand better how to watch out for your friends and to hear real talk about mental illness and getting support. Thank you for coming. We can change the way we all talk to each other about mental health. Just a few notes. Our program will be recorded and we'll make it available on YouTube and Facebook soon. Please feel free to ask Erica questions while she is speaking. The chat will be open and the Catch team and I will monitor it and ask as many of those questions that we can at the end of the presentation. Erica has graciously agreed to answer anything we don't get to in writing after tonight. Erica Leibrandt is a Northwestern University educated psychotherapist and a published author who specializes in anxiety and depression. She began her work after her 16-year-old son tragically took his life in 2004, and she's been advocating for teens and suicide awareness and prevention since. Erica believes that communication is key in preventing not just suicide, but debilitating mental health issues that compromise the quality of life. She is dedicated to helping teens and families learn the right language to connect with each other, as well as providing them tools, insights, and resources by which to empower themselves. I'm very pleased to welcome Erica Leibrandt.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today, to you and to the entire Catch team. It's so wonderful to have a chance to talk to teens directly. I feel like us adults talk a lot about teens, but not as much as we need to directly to teens. So tonight hopefully is going to make a change in that. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with my first slide. I really want to talk tonight about the specifics of anxiety, depression, and the suicidal mind. I feel like these are terms that are bandied about and just sort of thrown around, but oftentimes we don't know exactly what they mean. So part of my intention tonight is to educate all of you watching about symptoms of anxiety and depression, what the suicidal mind looks like, how to self-check and figure out if you're at risk, or, you know, even if you're just suffering from some lower grade depression or anxiety, how you can improve on that, how to talk to your friends, how to reach out to parents, and sort of all those helpful things surrounding the subjects of mental health and mental illness. You know, in preparation for this presentation today, Amy mentioned my son that passed. His birthday was on February 4th, and I knew this presentation was coming up. So my husband and I sat down and watched videos of our son and of the day that he passed. And as always, we were truly humbled by the amount of people that turned out to mourn him. The reason that I bring this up is because he would have been shocked by everyone's reaction. He would have been absolutely stunned at the grief that his death caused. And I tell you that to tell you that each and every one of you would cause that reaction in people. You matter. Your life is important. There is no way that you could leave this earth and no one would notice. And I know it's hard to connect with that reality, even for adults. It's hard for us to know how important we are. But I wanted to say that to you, as I wish I could have said it to my son. So what is mental health? We talk a lot about mental illness, but mental health is really what we're going for, obviously. So it's about feeling positive about the mind and the body, feeling like you have something to offer, feeling like your body is strong and healthy. It's about feeling safe and able to cope. So knowing you have coping mechanisms and people you can trust to help you. Having a sense of connection to others, knowing you're loved and knowing that your voice counts. And this is a really tough one, especially for teens, having a sense of purpose. It's kind of an existential question. And by that big word, I mean, we wonder, why do we exist? What is my purpose on earth? And if we don't have that, or we don't perceive one, that can really lead to a great deal of anxiety and depression. So as you teens watching right now, look at this list, think about which of those items maybe are really working for you, that you feel good about, and which that you maybe don't. So the flip side of mental health is mental illness. One thing you may not know is that it can be triggered by the brain, by the physical brain, or it can be triggered by the environment, by the circumstances in which you live. So in the end, it doesn't really matter, except in terms of how it's treated, where the mental illness comes from, but that it's there. So if your family life is incredibly dysfunctional, that can cause depression. Or if your neurons aren't firing properly in your head, that can cause depression. Either way, the depressive symptoms are the same, and they're equally debilitating and need to be treated. Mental illness also occurs on a spectrum. So I can have two people stand next to each other. They're both depressed. They both have the symptoms of depression, but one person may scale like a 1 or a 2 on the level of depression, and the other person might scale like a 99 or 100. So the reason that's important is just because you feel you might be struggling with a mental illness, it doesn't mean it's the worst thing in the world. And you can scale it and try to figure out what type of help or what intensity of help might I need based on the intensity of my symptoms. The next one, mental illness affects 20% of American teens. That's 1 in 5 kids. And I have to tell you, honestly, I think that that is a very low estimate. Mental illness is underreported. And if I had to guess, I think I would say it's at least 50% of American teens. But the great news is anxiety, depression, even the more intense mental illnesses like schizophrenia, they're all treatable. We have lots of ways to treat mental illness now, including tons of interventions like talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, art therapy, which we offer at Sound Mind Counseling. It's wonderful. And we also have medications. So, you know, even 50 years ago, this was a much less treatable set of symptoms. But now, if you're struggling with mental illness, there's a great chance that you can feel better if you get help. And I find that very hopeful. So anxiety and depression, it's what I specialize in. It's what I see a lot of. And it's what I think is among the most common mental health issues in teenagers. They kind of intermix. They're not the same thing, but often if you have anxiety, you'll also have depression and vice versa. So you can take a look here at the symptoms of each. Anxiety tends to be more somatic symptoms. And by that, I mean physical. So if you have symptoms of anxiety, you tremble, you sweat, like I'm sweating right now because I'm a little bit nervous doing this presentation. right? So a little sweaty, a little trembly, heart rate increases. And if these things are happening to a point where it's interfering with your ability to function, we call that clinical anxiety. So having those symptoms can cause depression. It makes you upset that you're not in control of your physical being, right? But depression can happen on its own as well. And having depression can cause anxiety. So these two things, and again, take a look at the symptoms and see if you can pick out any that feel like they resonate with you. I had one client who looked at this and said, yes, I have every single symptom on this list. And I laughed. She was right. She does have every single symptom on both of these lists. So take a look at that and see. And if you feel like, you're really tired all the time, you're really irritated, you feel guilty, you feel helpless or hopeless, you probably have some measure of depression. And again, as I said on the last slide, just because that's true doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever. So mental health changes throughout our lives. At some points in our lives, we'll be really quite healthy and feeling hopeful and sound and connected and purposeful. And other times, maybe not so much. So just because you're feeling anxiety or depression or some other symptomatic things of mental illness now doesn't mean that's going to last forever. And that's important. Because if you have the idea that you can feel better, that gives you the motivation to carry on. So, self-check. Am I okay? The prior card looked like kind of something a doctor would give you. And it's just like, these symptoms, they don't really connect with me. So I wanted to make a list of things that might actually resonate more with you as an individual. Things that I have felt myself, and I've struggled, I'm really open about this. I've struggled with both anxiety and depression throughout my life. So these are some of the things I've experienced that my clients have experienced, and that are signs that you might be dealing with something more than I'm just a little stressed or I'm just a little down today. So do you have recurring thoughts? Like thoughts you just can't get out of your mind. They're just going and they're going. Negative self-talk, stuff like you look in the mirror, I can't believe how ugly I am. I'm fat or I'm skinny or whatever it might be. Or I'm stupid. That tape that runs in your head is that we all have the tape, but for some of us, it's a terrible tape. So taking a minute to think about what your internal tape is like. Avoiding people you don't usually, or avoiding people, that you usually want to see. When we get depressed, we do what's called isolate, and we just don't want to connect with others. That's one of the more dangerous signs of depression if it persists over time. That isolating means you're trapped in your own thoughts and you can't see a way out of them. So if you start to sense that you're avoiding people, as hard as it is, as much as it feels counterintuitive, try to reach out to someone. Feeling like you can't get out of bed, not like you just don't want to and you're lazy, but like it's almost like you have a leaden X-ray apron on you and you can't move. Or you can't sleep, right? You're up all hours of the night, you're tossing, you're turning. Such a terrible feeling, insomnia. You believe you have a major problem you can't solve and nobody can help you. You feel like everything is pointless. You're consumed by negative emotions, anger, sadness, or fear. You can't eat, you're never hungry, or on the opposite side, you're eating all the time. You just can't seem to stop yourself from eating. You feel dizzy, disoriented, or sweaty for sometimes no reason. You're just hanging around and these physical sensations might wash over you. You don't want to do the things you usually like to do. Maybe you used to like to play soccer and now it's just like, yeah, right, no way. You're doing drugs, you're drinking to numb yourself out. That's a pretty obvious one, but it bears mentioning. And finally, going to some dark places in your mind. And what I mean by that is thinking about death. either imagining what it's like just to not be alive, or even developing a plan to take your own life. And needless to say, that's a clear symptom of depression. So in preparation for this presentation, in addition to watching videos of my son, I also talked to every single teen client I have and have had in the past to find out what their biggest complaint is about adults. They told me, each and every one, that adults are annoying, which is why I named this card, Adults Are Annoying. And the reason specifically that they are annoying, I am told, is that we don't know how to listen, and we don't think teen problems are real. And I get it. There's a big distance between who I am today and who I was as a teenager, and I have different priorities now. So maybe when my teen talks to me, I'm looking at him through my lens. I think that's what these teens were saying. We're not looking at them through their lens. We're looking at them through our lens. And on behalf of all adults, I'd like to apologize for doing that. We don't want to, but we seem to not be able to stop ourselves. I apologize for that. But some adults don't do it as much as other adults. We all do it to some degree because we're adults, and adults are annoying. But some adults are better than others. So you can choose your adult. So choose wisely. Not all adults are created equal. You know on a gut level which adults might listen to you and which not. They still might be annoying, but they might listen. And that's what you really need. You don't need someone to be your friend or your pal, but you do need an adult who will be calm and compassionate and not freak out. So you say, hey, adult, I've got some stuff going on. Can you listen without freaking out? If your adult cannot listen without freaking out, say, thanks, I'm good, and choose another adult. There's lots of us around. There's like a plague of adults. You can find one of us that will help you. Repeat as necessary. Teen to teen. So this is a tough one, right? Because adults are annoying, a lot of times teens will go to a friend instead. And then that friend wants to help. It has all this pressure of how do I actually help? What should I do? Well, here's what to do. First, you just listen. Don't worry about next steps. Just really tune into your friend. Look at their body language, listen to their tone of voice, see if something seems different. Like, does it look like they haven't taken a shower or something weird, or brush their teeth? Like, is anything off about them? Listen and look and pay attention to what they're saying and how they are. And then you can try to figure out how bad things are by just tuning into your gut, like just feeling it in your body. And you can ask them questions. You can say, wow, man, that sounds really bad. Like, how dark is it actually getting for you? And don't worry about what you have to do. Just be right there in the moment with them. And as I mentioned before, one of the key symptoms and one of the most dangerous symptoms of depression is isolating. So it's pretty standard that a friend, even if they're a great friend, in this terrible state of mind, will push you away. It's not personal. Don't take it personally. If they keep pushing you away, that's a red flag that they're in trouble. So keep trying to reach out, even if it seems like you're being annoying. Don't worry about being annoying. Doesn't matter. All that being said, sometimes this happens a lot. Your friend might say, whatever they say, I'm trying to think like a teen again and I'm failing. Things really suck and everything's horrible. I hate my parents and I just want to, I just want to die. Something like that. That was a horrible impersonation of a teen. You'll forgive me. If they say that, you have to pay attention and take it seriously. I know everyone's been telling you this since you were born. I'm going to repeat it. You have to take it seriously. And you have to tell somebody about it. You have to. Even if you promise your friend you're not going to, doesn't matter. Better to break a promise than have a friend die, right? every time. If they hate you for the rest of your life, too bad, you're fine. All that being said, it sounds like I'm putting a lot of pressure on the person who's being confided in, and I guess that I am. But at the end of the day, you are not in control of what anybody but you does. And if your friend decides to make a horrible decision despite your best efforts to help them, that is not on you. And you have to accept that you're not in control. So this is a big question, right? We wonder this. Dylan Buckner just took his life. He, by all stretches of the imagination, had a great life from what I understand. He was a great student, a great athlete, a great son. He had great friends. And I imagine all of those people are wondering, like I did when my son died, really, what the hell was he thinking, first of all? And second of all, doesn't he care about us and the people he left behind? Why would he do this to us? How could someone do this to somebody else? And it's just not like that. It took me a lot of years to realize that suicide is not selfish. When someone is in a suicidal state of mind, their brain is like a burning building, which is why I put this graphic there. They are in so much pain inside their head. For them, the only option is to jump out, and that's to take their lives. They are not thinking of friends or family or anything else besides the pain in their head that they need to stop right then and there. And, you know, I kind of liken it to images of the World Trade Center when the building was on fire and people were jumping out from those high stories. And it seemed inconceivable to me that they could make a decision to jump. And it was just because they literally had no other decision to make. And that's what's happening in a suicidal mind. So if you ever wondered, know for a fact, suicide is not selfish. This confused a couple of the people that I showed these slides to before I did this presentation. Hey, we want to feel good all the time, right? We want to feel happy and peaceful and chill. But the truth is this, we're not supposed to feel good all the time, because if we did, we probably wouldn't get anything done. Anger and anxiety are what I call activating emotions, right? They activate us, they motivate us to do stuff. If we're angry, we get ready to make some changes. And when we're anxious, we're sort of propelling ourselves forward. Hopefully, sometimes clinical anxiety keeps us frozen, but healthy anxiety makes us move forward and do things. So mental health is not a question of eliminating all uncomfortable emotions. We need uncomfortable emotions to lead our best lives and to be productive and to defend ourselves from injustice and to create all of the wonderful things that we're destined to create in our lives. When anger and anxiety get to a level where they're paralyzing us and interfering with our ability to do the things we want to do, that's when it becomes an issue. But anger and anxiety in themselves are not bad. And I really wanted to speak to that. So this is important too. You know, being human is really hard. Every day is hard all the time for everyone. And we try to do a lot of things to make it less hard. And sometimes those things start out as Band-Aids. They help for a minute and they end up making everything even more hard ultimately. So, you know, quick list, self-harm. We start that because we either want to not feel our emotions or we want to feel something, right? Self-harm. And that quickly devolves into something that we have to hide, that we have to be ashamed of, that, you know, is hurting us physically, and that becomes an obsession. Drinking and drugs, obvious, right? Promiscuity, having sex. Like, it's not that having sex is bad, but that doing it to numb your emotions out or get the attention that you feel you're not getting somewhere else. So you do that to solve those problems, and then it becomes its own problem. disordered relationship with food. We eat a lot to numb our feelings, or we starve ourselves to have a sense of control. And at first that seems to help manage anxiety and depression. But after that, it becomes a runaway train. And we have to exert all this energy to solve this new problem that we've created. Other obsessive thoughts and behaviors, the human brain is very creative. So we have endless ways to be obsessive in our minds and in our behaviors, OCD or just about anything humans can grab onto to try and soften feelings of anxiety and depression. And so often that morphs into a whole other, what we call pathology or mental health problem. So what do you do instead? Instead of cutting or promiscuity or drinking or drugs, this list, it may seem kind of silly, and I'm sorry if it does, but I'll tell you what, it's also pretty effective. And these are some things that I still do myself to try and wade through some of my more challenging mental health moments. They won't solve all your problems, but what they do is doing these things helps you get through to the next place where you're kind of okay. So you don't succumb to your darkness. Journal, classic. Draw if you're an artist. Run, that gets your endorphins going. You can scream. Screaming's good. Write a letter. By that, I mean write a letter to someone that you're not going to send it to. So a parent is really pissing you off. Write them a letter. Say everything you want to say and then don't send it. But probably burn it, because if they find it, it might be a problem. Take a break, just chill, just get some distance from whatever's going on. Light a candle and really look at the flame. That's called mindfulness. Really look at the flame. See all the colors in it and how high it is and what it's doing. All of these things, by the way, how they are helpful is that they break what we call a neural loop that you've gotten trapped in. So if you're in a negative state of mind, you have thoughts that feel like they're just going around and around and around. And they are. It's called a neural loop. So anything you can do to get off of that track will buy you some distance from the problem and will help you think about it more objectively and calmly. So all of these things are ways to break a neural loop. Hold an ice cube. Somebody looked at that and said, what are you talking about? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's not. It's a classic cognitive behavioral therapy treatment. You put an ice cube in your hand, that neural loop just kind of blows up. Try it. It actually helps a lot. Call or text someone. Feel stuff. Stop trying to not feel your stuff. Just let it come up. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to freak out. Just freak out. My favorite, pet a dog. Not so much a cat fan, but for those cat fans, you can pet a cat. Another favorite of mine, get into nature. Just get outside. I don't know what it is. Well, I kind of do, but I won't waste your time speculating. Just trust me, get into nature. It helps. Meditate, like I said, with the candle flame. There's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of great meditation apps today available that you can do, and they're wonderful. I wish I'd had that when I was a teenager. And most simply, just walk. Get outside, move your body, walk. Break the neural loop. Oh, sorry. If none of those things are working, I added the National Suicide Prevention Hotline because, let's be real. Some of this stuff is candy corn if your brain is in a truly suicidal state, right? So if you're trying all these things, you're talking to people, you're trying everything, you cannot get out of it, that's the time to make this call. People on this hotline are incredible. They're compassionate. They will never judge you. It's anonymous. Just pick up the phone and call. They'll help you. Look, in this world, everything looks perfect. We got lighting and makeup and social media and, just access to everything. And it's all kind of an illusion, isn't it? Here is the truth. Everyone has a real lot of bad days. Everybody does, everyone. Even Tom Brady just won the Super Bowl. He has a lot of bad days. It's just kind of part of being human. You have to cultivate resilience. Know that you're strong. You're stronger than you think you are. And if you don't feel strong, get connected to someone who can infuse you with strength and who can inspire you to keep going. I believe in you. I'm so grateful that you watched this presentation today. It tells me that you have hope and that you want to fight for your own well-being and your mental health and for your life. And that's what you're supposed to do. Life is hard, but it's beautiful, and you got to keep going. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Erica, so much for your honesty, your knowledge, your heart. We did have some questions come in beforehand as well as this evening, so we'll just fire away if you don't mind.
Not at all.
I'm worried about my friend and want to tell someone, but I'm afraid that the breach of her trust will only upset her more. Not sure which is worse or what to do.
Okay. So if this person can, I'll answer that question generally, but if this person would like to reach out to me personally so that I can help her sort out exactly what she's seeing, I would be glad to talk to her one-on-one, just via email or something, or on the phone. Because sometimes it's really hard to tell, you know, how much in danger is our friend, and really what should our reaction be? Am I overreacting? Am I underreacting? And I think that's what she's really talking about. The bottom line and the general answer is, it sounds like some red flags are going up for this teen about her friend. And as I said earlier, even if you lose a friend over it, it's better than your friend dying. So you have to it's a brave thing to break trust in this case, and you might be villainized for it. And you have to know in your heart that it was still the right thing to do.
The next two are similar. Can you touch on the best way to talk to your parents about mental illness, especially if they have trouble understanding a cause of it? And then there was a similar question about, I'm worried about approaching my parents about mental illness because they're already so stressed.
Okay, those are two very different questions. You know, parents are not necessarily the first person you should be talking to, because sometimes their reaction is very hot, right? Because they love you and they're really worried about you and invested in what's going on. So it might be helpful sometimes to talk to a counselor first who can help mediate a conversation with your parents. Like, in other words, you reach out to a counselor and say, this is what's going on. I'm not sure how to talk to my parents. Like, do you have ideas, or can we bring my parent in here? So then the parent has an opportunity to kind of keep their cool as the subject is introduced. That's one thing that I recommend. For the second question, it sounds like this child is worried about their parents' mental health.
Yeah, it went on, pardon me for interrupting, but it went on to say, my mom worries all the time already.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pile on more.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if your mom is worried all the time already, she probably has an idea that something is going on with you. And I think it would alleviate her worry to have you just be open with her. So she'll still worry. She's already worried. I think her worry would be less if she knew that you were being honest with her. Of course, that may not be the case. And if she freaks out, we go back to what I said. If your adult freaks out, you have to go to a different adult. Don't just then shut down. You know, if you try to talk to your parents and it doesn't work out the way you'd hoped, that doesn't mean you just shut the whole thing down. It means you find someone who's better equipped to help you in that moment, right?
My sister has anxiety and depression, and she takes up all of my parents' attention. It's so annoying. It makes me mad. Any suggestions on how to handle that?
I would ask this person, if they're in therapy themselves, and if they're not, can they ask to be? Because that may seem like a small issue, but it's a huge issue. It's a family dynamics issue. So what she's talking about is lots of times in a family, there is what we call the identified patient, like the problem child. And that child sucks up all the energy for the family. And then everyone else is just left swinging in the wind. And it sounds like that's what she's got going on. It's hard to demand the same kind of attention if you're not the problem child from your parents who are overtaxed trying to deal with the problem. So experiment, see if they'd be willing to enlist someone who can help you get your voice heard in the family. You need your own therapist. So try and see if that can happen. And if that can't happen, try and see if you can go to family therapy and speak to the unfairness of how the energy in the family is being sort of spread out. That's such a common problem. It's so tough. I feel that one in my heart.
I know I was going to say earlier, I did not think either of my children were on here, but some of these questions make me wonder.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I've read that anxiety and depression are on the rise and are much more prevalent than they used to be in teens. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? What are the contributing factors to that?
I love whoever asked this question because they're psychologically minded. They're interested in the reasons things happen. That's a smart question. There's a couple of reasons, in my opinion. One, I think anxiety and depression and mental illness in general is more reported than it used to be. So, we're talking about it more. We have language around it more. Even in 2004, when my son died, the word suicide we weren't supposed to say it out loud. So things have changed a lot. People are talking more, but that's not the only reason. Suicide and anxiety, or depression and anxiety, and suicide as well, are all legitimately on the rise. I think I'm not going to blame it on social media, but I kind of am going to blame it a little bit on technology. Humans need to connect with each other to be mentally healthy, and technology gives us the illusion of connection, but we're not truly connecting. And so we're all kind of doing this weird depressive isolating. And I can't really put it in simpler terms. I think that's a main cause of it. And one of the other main causes is having too much information. Like, we see what too many people are doing. We compare ourselves to too many people. And when that happens, of course, we come up short. Like, no matter how okay we think we are, there's always somebody who's doing better, doing more, prettier, smarter, faster. And that wasn't always the case. We weren't always exposed to that constant, barrage of, awesomeness in others. We had a chance to kind of feel our own awesomeness and just be settled with it. So I think, more reporting, less stigma, less connection due to technology, and an overabundance of choices and information.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a lot of really good questions here. What is the best way to be there for a friend who, when they need it, let's see, let me try that again. What is the best way to be there for a friend who, when they need it, don't want your help? How can we be there for them?
You just got to keep trying. So, like I said, a friend who is really shutting down and isolating, it's probably the biggest red flag that there is. The person is going into a dark place. This may sound stupid, but I liken it to like when a dog gets hit by a car, they crawl into a bush to just kind of lick their wounds by themselves. And that's their instinct. It's our instinct as well. I'm not sure why, but it is. But that dog needs help, right? It can't lick its wounds back to health. And when someone is trying to pull away and hide under a bush in that way, they need help too. You can't force anyone to receive your help, but you can keep trying even though they keep pushing you away. And that's really the best advice I can give. Just gently keep trying, keep texting, put your hand on their shoulder if you see them. You know, just be with them in silence. Don't force them to talk. Sit next to them quietly. You know, we don't need to always fill the space with words, despite how much I'm talking right now. So just physically be there, spiritually be there, and maybe it'll help. And it certainly will help more than if you did nothing and you know you tried, and that's not nothing, that's important.
That seems like it makes a lot of sense to me, because if someone is struggling as hard as this friend might be in their own brain, they can't really be present with you, but you can be present with them.
That's right. That's right. And just sitting with someone, even sitting on the phone in silence, even holding a phone and texting and saying, I'm texting you this and I'm here. I'm holding my phone. I'm looking at your dots. That's a connection. And that's what that person needs, whether they want it or not.
I confided in a teacher, and then he reported about our conversation, and they called my parents. What I told him was not a big deal, and I'm really pissed off. So I don't think you're right that you can pick an adult.
Okay, fair enough. This is another conversation I'd love to have privately. I don't know what you confided in your teacher. Teachers, I'm sure you know, have a responsibility to report certain things. So I don't know what his responsibility in that scenario was. I'm sorry that you felt he betrayed you or she betrayed you. And the fact that you're sitting here right now listening to this tells me that you still want to reach out. And maybe you are choosing a different adult by listening to me now. I don't know. If you want to have a conversation, again, one-on-one, I'll offer that to you so we can maybe sort out a better answer than I can give you here with not so much information.
How do you balance being a good friend and a good listener to friends who are needy versus taking care of yourself and finding those who can help you?
Oh, this is a wise teenager. Wow. So this sounds like someone who takes care of everybody and thinks maybe, well, am I taking care of myself well enough? It's hard to balance that. If you're a natural healer, that's something that can take a lifetime to learn. One of the things you can do is just tune into yourself and notice, do I feel drained? Do I feel angry? Do I feel just kind of wiped out? And even if your friend needs you, you know, it's kind of like that old analogy with the oxygen mask. If you don't put your mask on first and let yourself breathe, you can't really help anybody else. You can't give and give and give and give and run on empty and be effective. So you can be there for your friends, and you should. It sounds like you're probably a natural healer and an empath. But you need to take times for yourself where you recharge. And if you're an empath, you're probably also an introvert. So you might need to do those things alone by yourself. You know, lay in bed, be with your pet, walk your dog, do those. I think of those things as recharging, like literally like we recharge our phone. You're giving away a lot of energy and you have to pull some back in for yourself. And it doesn't mean you're a bad friend if you need to do that, even when your friend is in need sometimes.
So many of the symptoms you're describing are things it seems like everyone's dealing with in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know if it's just normal pandemic stuff or something we really need to get help for?
Great question. So first of all, nothing is normal in the pandemic. So part of, I'd say, so we talk about the symptoms of the coronavirus, like, oh, breathing and fevers and this and that. Well, another symptom of this pandemic for all of us is anxiety and depression. It's a symptom we're all experiencing together as a culture. So we're all kind of sick right now. This pandemic is making us sick. And that's not just something to say, that's real. Our mental health as a whole is not great because in part of the pandemic. So one of the ways we can figure out if we need, if we can kind of like make it through with this discomfort and these symptoms of anxiety and depression, or if we need help, is to scale it, right? So you look at those symptoms of anxiety and depression, and you go down the list and you say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 100, how often do I feel like I cannot get out of bed? Not like, oh, I'm just lazy, I don't feel like getting up, but like I can't get out. If it happens to 1 or a 2, well, you're probably okay. If you're talking about like 100 every day, all the time, say something to somebody. And in terms of the symptoms, if even only one of those symptoms that I showed on that prior card, and you can find more information about symptoms of both at the National Institute for Mental Health online, NEMHE. If even one of any of the symptoms for anxiety and depression for you is happening at like a, let's say a 50 to 100 for 2 weeks or more, please don't hesitate, get help. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. And if it doesn't, I'll clarify after this.
How do I get my friends to understand how I'm really feeling? They're really clueless about how my anxiety affects me and makes me want to isolate by myself.
It's tough. It's tough to make people understand how you're feeling. You may not be able to do that. It's really a measure of who your friends are and how emotionally intelligent they are. You might have friends that aren't in a place where they can understand. And if that's true, you need to seek out other people, be they different friends or adults that are more able to get it. But you can't fit a square peg into a round hole. If somebody is not getting it, they may just not be able to for whatever reason. Find somebody else who can. I'm not saying change your friends. These are your friends. They're important to you. But you can maybe add someone to the roster of your personal circle, maybe a therapist or, a different kind of a friend or a relative or an adult. Add someone into the mix who can understand. These are tough questions, by the way, guys. I'm like breaking into a sweat over here.
We just have a few more, and then you can, drink the water or something. I feel depressed. I talked to my parents about it, and they didn't respond well. My mom said that therapy is BS, and I'll be fine. What do I do now?
Ooh, okay. Toughest question of the night. Wow. I actually am not sure. If this person's parents are shutting down their ability to get help, they're going to have to try and find it on their own. And really your only resource is going to be through school at that point. So trying to cultivate a relationship with a counselor and telling that counselor what your parent said and saying, I have no alternative. I realize it's not your job to be my weekly counselor, but I really need someone who will take my mental health seriously. And my first line of defense is not doing that. That's not a great answer, but that's kind of the only answer that I can think of right now. That stinks. And I'm really sorry that your parents shut you down. That breaks my heart.
Do you think that when people hear the word mental health, what do you think that people's first reaction to those words are? I mean, do you think that people respond by saying mental illness in their brain rather than mental health?
Mm-hmm. I do. In fact, I was just reading a book about this called Nobody's Normal. And they were saying that the reason the term mental health came into being was to combat the stigma of mental illness, but it actually doesn't do that because it implies mental illness.
It does.
Right?
I think it does.
It totally does. And that was actually why I started this presentation, was saying like, well, what is mental health? You know, we keep talking about illness, sickness, you know, darkness. Well, what is the high point of that? But the question is like, basically this question's about stigma. And sadly, the answer is the stigma is less, but it's still real. I mean, if I came into a room and I told somebody, you know, hey, by the way, I'm schizophrenic and I tried to take my life a couple of years ago, what do you think people are going to like say to me? And those are very common mental illnesses, both of those. So stigma is real, and mental health is another way of saying mental illness and trying to pretend like we're not.
When I feel overly stressed or sad, I tend to listen to sad music and just feel my emotions, like looking for cathartic releases. Is this right? Should I actually be trying to do this when I'm very stressed?
So remember when I said before, one of the ways to help yourself is to let yourself feel your emotions. That's exactly what you're talking about doing. You know, our emotions are in there. And we have a choice. We can either stuff them down and pretend they're not there, or do things like self-harm or drugs to not feel them. Or we can listen to sad music and just feel them, just let them come through us. As long as you know that there's a time for that to stop, you know, you can put a framework around it. Again, when my son died, somebody told me, I don't remember who, but it was pretty smart. Somebody said, set aside 15 minutes a day to freak out and scream and cry. Just do it for 15 minutes and then stop and get about your day. And that was a way for me to feel my feelings without letting them totally consume me. Didn't always work. You know, it's easier said than done. But I'd say that listening to sad music, do it in a similar way. Let yourself do it. Of course. Sad music, people write sad music because we need to feel sad. We have to feel sad. But try not to let yourself get completely lost in it, and you know, maintain some sense of boundaries, I guess, with it would be the word.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit on that last question. Can you just speak a little bit more to the feelings thing, when sometimes it just feels like you want to push them away. You just want them to be gone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why is it so important to feel the feelings?
Okay, so feelings are energy. They have like substance. We don't think of it like that. We think of it as just a sort of an air thing. But feelings are energy, they're inside of us. And if we let them sit in place, they get kind of infected, right? If they're not moving around. Now this sounds kind of weird. This is my yoga teacher brain talking here. But if emotions stay stuck or pushed down or compartmentalized, that's not where they want to be. So they end up getting really infected, like an impacted tooth or something like that. And then layers of poison sort of form around the original emotion and make it even worse. So if we just feel our feelings, as tough as it is, it stops that kind of, you know, buildup inside. And that may not be the best explanation. That's how I conceptualize it. I know, and I'll say it more simply, I know from seeing clients and experiencing trying to suppress emotions myself, every time we do it, it ends badly. Anytime we try to push down an emotion and just really focus on keeping it under control without any release, it ends badly. So
does it also help you understand that at least most of the time you get to the other side of them and you're okay?
Yes, great thought. So somebody else said this to me once, which I love. Emotions are like clothing or outfits that we take on and put off, right? So underneath the clothing is us. And we put on many outfits throughout the week. Like today, maybe I'm wearing depression. And then maybe in the afternoon, I take depression off and I put on, peace or whatever. So emotions, one thing that is always true about emotions is that they come and they go. So we can ride the wave of our emotions and know that whatever emotion we're having, good or bad, it's always moving. It's always going to move through us like clouds or like changing those outfits.
I think we have come to the end of, I want to be mindful of people's time since it is dinner time. And we have come to the end of the questions that we have on hand at the moment. I do not know how to begin to thank you, Mrs. Leibrandt. The conversations that you're having with this community are really important. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for coming tonight. And for those of you who came and joined us, good on you. The more we can talk like this, the less stigma we have and the more help we can get for ourselves and our friends and our family. So please keep reaching out, keep in touch with Catch, connect with each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
For updated information on our mental health programming, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, or find us at catchescommunity.org. Catch is dedicated to making a difference in our community through empowering families to raise resilient and independent youth.